Have you ever felt like you didn't have enough money to cover all of the things that you were responsible for? Have you ever had that feeling before, that stress? I was talking to a friend just this last week, a friend from California, and we were catching up and talking about life and family, and the topic of the conversation turned to some financial stress that they were having. See, both he and his wife just recently got new jobs, but now with the new jobs, they were no longer able to afford the private school for their kids. And he had run the numbers, and even if both he and his wife both worked full hours they were allotted, and even if there were no sick days, which when you have kids, you know that that's a joke, after taking care of all their bills, they would have about $200 left at the end of the month, which gives it's a $50 margin each week. So we could see that wasn't enough room for private tuition for a school. And even though we've been talking about life and faith and family, I could tell that this financial stress was the heaviest weight on his heart at the moment, because he wanted to plan for the future. He wanted to make sure that his kids were in the right environment for their development and their growth. He wanted to dream together with his wife about how their family could make an impact on others and bless others by serving together and being involved as a force for good. But right now, all of that just seemed too far away under the huge burden of worrying whether or not they had enough money month to month. And even though he trusted God, it was hard to think about things like getting back into a Bible reading habit when this worry was always on his mind. It was hard to think about making sure to go to church together as a family when he was thinking about whether or not he should be picking up another shift on Sundays. It was hard to think about joining a life group when he and his wife already felt like their schedules were crazy busy, juggling back and forth of the kids' activities and their own work schedules, just trying to keep up with life. And all of the God stuff seemed to be disconnected from their normal life. Talking about spiritual things, about heaven, about doing good for others, it all seemed disconnected from his normal activities. It was almost as if he needed to get his act together first in his life before he could start to focus on the God stuff. It was almost as if God was separate from the things that were stressing him out, and his heart was just too burdened right now. And there's many people that share those same feelings. Maybe you are one of them. We come to church, we open our Bibles, the stuff we talk about, the things that we learn, we know they're good, but they don't seem to connect with our everyday lives. We know we should talk about our faith with others, but we don't know what to talk about that connects with where they are right now. So we mutter something about sin and heaven, and then maybe we just stay quiet. See, we wonder, does God stuff actually affect our lives here, now? Jesus seemed to think so. See, when Jesus came with an eternal message, it wasn't just for eternity after our lives. It was an eternal message for all of life, so that we could experience a new life, a transformed life, full of the all-encompassing hope that comes from trusting Jesus as our Savior and following him every day as our King. And so that's why we talk about real-life topics here at New Life, because Jesus wants you to experience this abundant, full, eternal life in every aspect of your life, here and now. So for the last few weeks, we've been looking at finances, something that Jesus taught about more than any other single topic, because we know the way that we view and use money reveals whether we are mastered by money or whether we are able to master our money and steward our resources according to biblical principles. So we want to learn how to be apprentices of Jesus in all areas of our life, including in our finances. So I want to recap the 5 biblical principles that we've been introduced to over the last few weeks. The 5 principles are, number 1, spend less than you earn. What is it? Spend less than you earn. Number 2 is avoid the use of debt. It's what? It's avoid the use of debt. Number 3 says build margin, which means what, church? To save. The 4th one is set long-term goals. And the 5th one is to give generously. See, we've been following the guiding of Ron Blue, who's a financial counselor, author, to help answer the question, how do I get ahead in my finances? And if you've ever asked that question, well, these 5 biblical principles are the answer. No matter where you find yourselves on your journey, applying these principles to your life can help you move forward. Because no matter what stage you're in, whether you're in the struggling stage trying to move to stable, whether you're in secure and you're trying to move up to surplus, these biblical principles can help you along that journey. Now, if you've missed any of the last few weeks, I really want to encourage you, go online, catch up, because you can begin to take action in applying these principles to your life. The last 3 weeks have been really foundational in setting up this series. But today, we're going to be talking about the fourth and the fifth one, setting long-term goals and giving generously, because you can't really talk about one without also talking about the other. Now, last week, Pastor Eric helped us see that God is such a good provider that he is able to help us steward our resources, to take care of us, to take care of our families, and also be able to take care of blessing others in the ways that Jesus is inviting us to, whether that's giving generously here at church or other causes, or whether that's opening up our homes and opening up our lives in hospitality to welcome people in and bless them in that way. See, we get to be a part of God's transformative work when we follow these biblical principles to have a better handle on our finances. But this is really hard to do if we're just living moment to moment, right? Today, we're going to talk about why we need to set long-term goals, and I'm going to give you 2 truths that will help in the process of setting long-term goals. Now, the first truth is actually an answer to a question. The question is, what do I lose if I skip the giving part? Because many people, pretty much anyone who looks at these principles would go, yeah, there's wisdom there. That is wise. Spend less than you earn, avoid debt, build margin, set long-term goals. I can get behind that. I can understand how that will increase my financial strength. And I can see how making those a habit in my life will be good for my longevity of managing and stewarding the resources that I have. But this giving generously part, I don't know if I want to make that into a habit, because I like to just kind of give as the needs come up. When I hear about something, I'll kind of see how much I have, and I can give then. I've got too many other things that I'm working towards right now to actually make setting aside amount of giving every month or every week a part of my daily life. So what do I lose if I skip the giving part? Well, let's see how Ron answers that question.
They lose the joy, and Scripture's pretty clear. For send it on ahead. Randy Alcorn wrote the book, The Treasure Principle. You can't take it with you, but you can send it on ahead. And I believe that to be true. I think our rewards in heaven are not necessarily monetary, of course, but it's going to mean something. How I spend my life now means something for eternity.
I don't know if you heard that, but that's the first of the 2 truths that we're looking at today. And so you might even want to write it down. You can't take it with you, but you can send it on ahead. You can't take it with you, but repeat after me, you can send it on ahead. Now, this comes straight from Jesus' teaching. So I want to invite you to open up your black seatback Bible. If you didn't bring your own, if you brought your own Bible, great. But if you open up your black seatback Bible, Matthew chapter 6 is where we're going to be this morning. And that can be found on page 5 of the New Testament. So if you're using the black seatback Bible, you got to go through all the Old Testament, 100, all the way up to close to 700. And then you'll hit the New Testament. And page 5 of the New Testament is where you'll find Matthew chapter 6 this morning. And in this passage, we're going to see that Jesus is about to unlock something about our relationship with money. Something that we might have heard before, but something that his first listeners would have been shocked by. And even if you have considered it before, it's still kind of a shocking thing to think about today. So let's read together Matthew chapter 6, starting in verse 19. It says, "Do not store up for yourselves treasure on earth, where moth and rust consume, and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust consumes, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." I'll skip down to verse 24. "No one can serve 2 masters, for a slave will either hate the one and love the other, or be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and wealth." This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Now, I don't know how that was hitting you this morning, but this would have been blowing people's minds the first time that Jesus said it. Because Jesus is saying that the way that we handle our relationship with money,
talk a lot about the importance of setting.
it's okay. I put it too close in my notes. That's my fault here. Jesus is saying that the way that we handle our relationship with money is intimately connected with our existence in eternity with God. The way you handle money will impact eternity. And this would have shocked the people who heard it for the first time because they were more familiar with the teaching of the Sadducees. Now, the Sadducees, they didn't believe in an afterlife. They made a clear separation between the things of God and the things of the world. And because they didn't believe in an afterlife, the way that you lived here and now really only affected the here and now. So the way that you handle your money and your resources is really just about your own experience, your own family, your own ability to plan and use what you have for your immediate surroundings. But then here's Jesus saying that the way that you handle money and resources here and now will actually affect eternity. Jesus is correcting their understanding of how their actions and their faith they don't only impact the circle around them, but they have a much bigger impact, an eternal impact. Whoa. See, Jesus is saying there is actually a heaven. There is actually an experience that we have after this life. And we're either going to spend eternity in the presence of God or out of the presence of God. And so the way that we relate to our finances somehow has an impact on that experience. Now, we know that we can't expect our money and our resources and the things that we treasure to keep forever in this material world. And we know that we can't take them with us when we die. But we can invest it in eternity to send it on ahead. Now, I'm going to pause for a second because there might be some confusion, and I don't want to clear up any confusion here. I want to say very clearly what Jesus is not saying. This is not saying that there's a heavenly 401k plan that you can invest in and then in eternity make withdrawals from while you're living in heaven with God. It is not saying that. It is not a financial to financial equitable thing. It is also not saying that the more that you give to the things of God in this life, well, then you're going to have a bigger mansion in heaven. And then you can spend all of eternity judging the people with smaller mansions because well, they must not have tithed as much as you. They must not have served on as many VBS teams as you. Therefore, their reward is smaller. It is not saying that. That is not what this passage is saying. This passage is also not saying that the more that we give to the things of God, well, then we can buy our way into heaven. Salvation is a gift of grace through faith in Jesus. There's nothing that we can do to try and earn it because it's already offered freely through Jesus Christ. We can't buy it. We can't earn it. We can only accept or reject it. And once you do accept that gift, once you do put your faith in Jesus, it changes your whole perspective on life. It transforms how you see the world and how you understand that everything belongs to God. And we all have a part to play in the work of redemption and reconciliation and renewal that God is doing in the world right now. It's supposed to completely change the way you live. And we start to live differently than other people. And so, we're going to do things like give generously when others might say, why don't you just skip that part? See, what this passage is saying is that the way that you manage money gives evidence about whether you truly believe the things that you say you believe. I'll give you an example. If I say that everything I have is a gift from God, but then I get really frustrated when my church spends a 4-week sermon series talking about money, because how dare you tell me what to do with my money? Well, that reveals something. Or if you say that God is a good father and a good provider, but then you spend every waking moment stressing about things and worrying about if the finances are tight enough and figuring out whether or not you can work harder to pick up extra shifts in order to keep up with the lifestyle. Well, that reveals something. See, if I talk about how blessed I am by God, how God has blessed me so much in my life, but then I focus on using my money and resources only for me or only for my family because other people had better work hard like I did to get to where I am, well, that reveals something about our relationship with money. And Jesus is saying that this material world isn't eternal. This material world has decay and thieves and economic downturn. It's not secure. It can't guarantee our future. But investing our resources into the thing that God calls us into now somehow has a connection with eternity. See, when we join Jesus on mission with our finances, when we learn how to steward what we have in our situation, we make sure to spend within our means, we avoid debt, we build margin. When we get a longer view, when we follow the invitation of God to give to the work that he's doing, all of that is making a deposit in eternity, in the eternal aspects of our heart. Because it's entrusting material things into the hands of the eternal creator God of the universe, who can multiply the impact and transform the hearts and lives of way more people than if we were trying to do it on our own. See, doing that is actually seeing how we can be a part of a bigger mission, a God mission that can transform us and those around us. And it's recognizing that we have an opportunity to learn how to trust God now. Because don't you think if we spend our lives learning how to trust God now, that's probably going to influence the way that we relate to him for eternity? Well, we got to ask ourselves if we're willing to follow Jesus' teaching on this. Are we motivated to invest in the eternal aspects of our hearts, or would we rather invest in our lives now? Would I rather have a little bit more comfort, a little bit nicer vacation? Would I rather have a little bit more cushion in my bank account rather than asking God how he's inviting me to invest in his work? Now, we know that we can't take it with us when we die, but we can send it on ahead to eternity through how we manage our money by setting long-term goals and giving generously to the things that God invites us to. So that's the first truth about long-term planning. The second thing that you can take away from this morning is this: if you aim at nothing, you'll hit it every time. Let's hear how Ron talks about this.
You talk a lot about the importance of setting long-term goals in finances. So why and how do you advise someone to set long-term goals? Why and how?
Well, why is if you aim at nothing, you'll hit it every time, okay? And any road will get you there. So if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. So you set a goal not as something that I have to have, but you set a goal as something that I'm aiming towards. And I don't think the goal is as important as the process of setting the goal.
Say that again.
I don't think the goal is as important as the process of setting the goal. I counsel people, write your goals on the seashore. Write them in the sand. You've documented them, but the waves come and wash it away, and you write another goal. So goal setting is a way that I think about the future. It's a way that I live for the future. And the key issue is not the goal, but the process. And I counsel people, set a faith goal. And by a faith goal, I mean, what would God have me to do? You know, I had a heart surgeon, one of my first clients, and he asked me. He was a young guy, a very reputable heart surgeon, and he had just built $1 million home. And he said, "Do you think it's okay for a Christian to have $1 million home?" And God gave me some wisdom, because I said, "I don't know. What do you think God thinks about that?" And he said, "Well, how do you know that?" And I said, "Well, are you spending any time asking him?" And he said, "No." He said, "I'm in surgery in the morning at 6, and sometimes I'm on call at night." And I said, "Well, what are you doing at 4 in the morning?" He said, "Sleeping, probably." And I said, "Then you don't have anything I'd better do. Get up and spend 10 minutes and ask God that question." And he did. And a year later, we saw him we were on vacation, and his wife said, "He's spending 2.5 hours a morning in God's Word." This guy became today a leading evangelical leader, giving millions of dollars away. God never allowed him to sell that home until a year ago because it was used for ministry and so forth. So the process of asking God, what would you have me to do, is really what goal setting is all about.
I think that the most helpful part of what Ron was just saying were the two questions that he gave to help us process the task of goals planning. The first question is, what are you aiming your finances? What are you aiming at in your finances? And the second question is, have you involved God in that process? See, asking God, what would you have me do, or where are you inviting me to invest in where you are working right now, is the act of planning goals. Asking God, how can I join you? Because we're not just trying to use these biblical principles to get ahead for our own sake and become financial gurus. It's not just so that we can become richer. We're trying to learn how to apprentice ourselves to Jesus, to have every area of our lives to be transformed to look more and more like his life. And so that's why setting long-term goals for our finances, it's not just about how much we earn or how much we spend or how much we can save. When we take a long-term view of our life following Jesus, we also have an opportunity to ask God to help us make long-term giving goals as well. Make long-term decisions on how to join him in that. Because if you're up towards the right in the stages of the finances in surplus, you might be wondering, like that guy in the video, how your life and your resources can make an impact in the kingdom of God. And so asking God to help you process long-term giving goals, that can give you clarity and direction for the things that he's inviting you to join him in. Or you might be more in the middle, towards stable and secure, and you're not worrying about the month-to-month fluctuations anymore. You're not worrying about making ends meet, but you haven't yet asked God to give you a bigger vision for how he's inviting you to join his mission through giving. Maybe what Pastor Eric mentioned last week struck a chord with you. Maybe it's stuck in your mind that you're considering making it a goal to give 10% of your income. You know, and it doesn't matter about the number, but maybe that number stuck out to you. Maybe you even like his suggestion of doing 5% committed to the church and 5% to some other cause that God puts in your heart. But you feel like, oh, maybe God is calling me to make a commitment, whatever number that is. Maybe you're on the left end of the scale. You're struggling or surviving, and trust me, I've spent a lot of time in that end of the scale. I know what life looks like in the struggling and surviving categories. And you might be listening to all this and thinking to yourself, Pastor True, this sounds all well and good, but even if I did give, it wouldn't be very much. And so therefore, I don't even think it'd be worth it, would it? It wouldn't make much of a difference. Now, to that I respond that besides the fact that we have all kinds of stories across the Bible about where God can take a little and increase it to make a huge impact for his kingdom, that's definitely true. But also, I'm a bit of a math nerd. I was a math major in college, and I thought we could use some math to talk about why that's not true. But I also just realized I think I just turned off half of your brains when I said the word math. So wake up, okay? Come on back. Don't worry. I'm not going to make it boring, okay? It's going to be nerdy, but it's going to be fun, okay? Let's just use a few little numbers here. Did you know that the average household income in our area, in the Sauk Valley, the average household can actually give hundreds of thousands of dollars to God's kingdom mission and still live their own life? You don't believe me. I know you don't, but here, let's do some math, right? The median household income in our area, the median household income that's all together added up before taxes, is between $50,000 and $55,000 a year. So let's just take 50, okay? And I know there's people who are above that and people who are below that. That's why this is the median, the middle, okay? So if people with that median income trusted God with 10% of that and invested in the things that God is inviting them to invest into, to join in, being part of his work, that's $5,000 a year. Now, even if that number never changed, if that income never went up or down and just stayed the same, and you just invested into God things, invested in your local church, invested into Jesus opportunities, well, over the course of a 40-year working career, that would add up to be $200,000 on just a little bit every month. And even if your income is half of that, over the course of a working career, that's $100,000 invested into the mission of God. to see how he is able to multiply the impact, to transform the hearts and lives of the people who are served by the family of God. Now, I don't know about you, but that sounds like an incredible impact for one person to make when they commit to trusting God with their finances, learning how to join him in setting giving goals. But even more than one person, what if we thought about our whole church? Now, on an average Sunday, we know that we come here maybe on our own, right? Like we come in different cars, but then we come here together or we join online, and God knits us together into a whole family, because this life following Jesus is not something we're supposed to do alone. We're in it together. We're called together to learn how to become apprentices of Jesus together. And God works through our whole church together when we're serving together and working together and giving together to accomplish way more than we could on our own. So on the average Sunday, between in-person services and online family as well, whether it's 8:30 or 10:30, or if you flip-flop between the two, an average Sunday, we'll have about 300 people worshiping together on an average Sunday. And let's just make that math easy. It's about 120 households, let's say, about 120 households. And so what if we just took the average median income that we talked about earlier, about 50 grand, and applied it across 120 households? That would be, over the course of 1 year, $600,000 of money invested into the kingdom of God. And over the course of the next 10 years, that's $6 million used for God's mission and transforming the hearts and lives of every man, woman, and child in the Sauk Valley through Jesus Christ. I mean, talk about a big impact from one church. And I don't know about you, but I want to be a part of that. And it's not just because I love money, because I don't. I love Jesus. And it gets me so excited to think about the ways that God is inviting us to join him in transforming our lives and transforming the lives of others through what we're involved in, but also through what we get involved in through our finances, by learning how to steward it better so that we can take care of ourselves and the things that he's inviting us into. And if you want to catch a vision for that type of big impact, Jesus actually gives us a process for it in our passage today. I don't know if you caught it, but if you open up again, we'll put it on the screen. If you open up again, it's there in verse 21. This is the process for catching a God vision. You ready? It says, "For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." I don't know if you caught it. It doesn't say, "Where your heart is, there your treasure follows." It doesn't say, when you're really excited about a thing, then you give to a thing. No. It says that it's where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Jesus knows how strong of a pull that money can have on our hearts. And so he lays it out plainly that when we put our treasure somewhere, when we direct our spending somewhere, when we intentionally set out long-term goals that point somewhere, our hearts follow that. And think about it. When you start spending more money on clothes, you start noticing how other people are dressed. I never noticed a single watch in my life until I was given a fairly nice watch as a gift one time. Then all of a sudden I was like, oh, that's a nice watch too. And oh, those people over there, they have nice watches. Never noticed it before. Or think about this. When you're in the market for a car, what do you see everywhere? That car. Everywhere. Oh, blue is nice. Oh, I like silver. It pulls your heart towards the thing. Some of you still don't believe me. That's okay. The principle that when you put your treasure somewhere, your heart follows that, I'll prove it to you. Ready? I'm going to prove it to you. Just plan on taking your family out to a nice dinner, like an expensive dinner, and you're paying for it. We're imagining this together. Nice. Nice, nice. And then when your kids complain or someone doesn't eat what they ordered, you tell me who you have love for. You will probably say through gritted teeth, do they know how expensive tonight is? Put it in a doggy bag. I'm taking it home and eating it later. Your heart follows where you invest your treasure. If you want to catch a vision for the work that God is doing here in our church, if you want to get passionate about the local partners that we get to work with here in the Sauk Valley, if you want to get excited for how God is at work around the world through the global missionary partners that we sponsor, invest here in our church. Invest here. And there's many of you who are listening right now that know exactly what I'm talking about because you already do invest here in our church. And God uses that to transform our hearts, to pull us towards the thing that he cares about, the thing that breaks his heart, the thing that he is concerned towards in our area through the ministry that we're doing here. See, if you want to get excited for what God is doing in the Sauk Valley, just ask him, where is he inviting you to join him on mission? Where is he inviting you to give generously? Maybe it's here in the church, maybe it's not. Maybe it's to another nonprofit, another cause. Maybe he's inviting you to support something else. But remember, giving generously, it's just one of the spiritual habits that we practice as a follower of Jesus so that we can let him transform our hearts, to actually move our hearts to care about the things that Jesus cares about. And it's not so much about a percentage or amount. I know that we talk about 10% or 2% or 5%, but it doesn't matter. It's about the process of inviting God into the conversation about where we are aiming our finances. And each person can give whatever God prompts them to give, and it's a thing that we get to do joyfully because we get to do it knowing that everything we have is already a gift from God. He's the excellent provider who has blessed us abundantly, who holds us safely in times of stress and worry, who invites us into the body of Christ so that we don't have to do it alone. He's the one who has given us what we need to provide for our needs and to be able to join him in the work of blessing others. We get to be a part of what Jesus is doing in our community through the time that we commit, as well as the resources that he's inviting us to invest. And this is all possible because of the love and grace that is offered to us in Jesus Christ, who humbly gave everything he had for us so that we could have life to the full. So praise be to God our Father, the maker of all and the giver of all good gifts, and praise be to the Son and the Holy Spirit now and forevermore. Amen.